Well, hello Team PHP and welcome to a new video. In this video, we basically going to be talking about how do we open, read, and write and close files in PHP. Now, just to let you know, before I do anything, opening, reading, writing to files is not a replacement of a database. We basically going to be creating some text files, storing some data in those text files, reading those text files, data or text from those text files back into our program. And that's what this class is all about. But again, whatever we're doing today is not a replacement for having an actual database for many, many reasons. Number one, a text file is not secure. A database is secure. Number two, reading from a text file or a database basically depends on the size of the information. So when you have a huge amount of information, reading from a text file is not going to be efficient, but reading from a database will be efficient. So for those two reasons, I don't want you to think that reading from a file is basically a way to replace reading or having a database. It's not, but it could be helpful in certain situations. Now, before I jump into how do we do that and how do we read and write to files and all these details, I just want to start with something really simple. This is again my EC2, web service. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm just going to open that page that I have. And here's my index file. I showed you this before, so I'm just going to write something. And then I'm going to click login. Immediately after I click login, you'll see that I was accessing a page called login.php, which basically is showing me my username and password. This is something we covered before. Now, if I go here into this, into my EC2, and if I would go and connect to it, and let's go ahead and navigate to the folder that contains my pages. Let's go ahead and change directory to the root directory, change directory var, www, HTML. And now if I go list -al, and you can see here I have a long list of files here. This one here, index and login, are my main pages that I just showed you. But you can see here that I have another page of PHP, which is testing. Now, if I want to have access to this testing page, if I want to have access to the index page here, all I have to do is just to type the IP address, which basically going to take me directly to the index file. But if I want to have access to any other files, for example, this testing.php, all I have to do is to come here, let's take this one away, and type testing.php. And it's taking me to this page, which it's the part where we actually learned about how do we do looping and stuff. So this is just to show you the structure and how do you have access to those files as you go. Now, if I want to add a new file to my HTML folder, well, there is a way to do that. What you can do, for example, here, you can start by typing touch, of course, sudo, don't forget that, touch, and then you type the name of the file you want to create. For example, I'm going to call this one page.html, just for the purpose of that one. Now, if I go list, you'll see that I should have a page.html. Here it is. Now, if I want to modify that page, I can type nano, or let's just start with sudo. So we get rid of this nano, and then page.html, and here we go. Now I can start writing my code as I go. Duck. Let me just do that really fast. Duck type HTML. And let's go ahead and type HTML. Let's close that HTML. Let's go ahead and do the head. Let me close the head. Then here is the body. And let me close the body. And inside the body here, I am just going to add a heading H1, testing the water. And let's close that H1. Okay, this is a simple HTML file. Now all I have to do is to save my work. Do you want to save the modif? Yes. And now I'm done. Now if I go ls, if I cat page, and here is my page. Now if I go back to this page, open it. Now if I just go here and type /page.html, and here it is, testing the water. Now this is one way to actually have access to those pages. Now if you don't want to go through this, for example, you are a person who likes to go through creating your work on your notepad and your Windows, and then you just want to put it into your server. Oh, well, basically this is what you have to do. I'm going to create here a new page here. Let me save this, and you should know where you're saving it. I'm putting it in my desktop. This time I'm going to call this page new PHP. Okay, now of course don't forget to put the extension new PHP. Where's the extension? PHP. Now save it, and I'm just going to type echo. I'll come here and put h1. Let me close h1. And I'll say testing the water again. And let's put semicolon here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this page. You should know where is it saved. If you don't know, I'll just go ahead and click Save As. It would take me to that folder. Okay, desktop, fall 2021, KCC courses. Okay, let me close it. I know where it is. Actually, why did I do that? Let me just go ahead and save it so I can copy this, because I'm going to need it later. Now what I need to do, again, imagine that your page is way longer than this. What you can do, you can come here, go back to your services, click on your S3, that's the one you created a long time ago. And then you will see you have buckets here. In my case, I'm going to use this one. I already have 2 files here. I need to upload a new file. And I'm going to go ahead and put, well, I need to actually navigate. That's not going to work. So let's go ahead and add a file. And let's go desktop and fall, KCC courses, and here it is. This is the new PHP.php. So now I added that file. I upload it. Wait for it a little bit. It's uploaded now. So I got new PHP file. Now if you click here on this, it's going to take you to a new page. This is the link that I need. But before I go there, I need to enable bucket. No, this is not what I'm supposed to do. Permission. Just change that. Let's edit the permission so it will not deny when you want to have access, because by default it's going to be only private. I understand. And save the change. Now I save the change. Now it's my job here to copy this file. And now I go back to my console window. And still, I'm inside the HTML file. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to type sudo wget and then put Control V, and that will give me. And now what's going to happen? That file is going to be actually copied from my S3 bucket to my server. And now I should have, if I go ls, and you should see, where is it? Where is it? Here it is. PHP new. Now, if I want to just cat that, you'll see that testing the water again. Now, if I go here and replace this HTML file with new php.php, and here it is, testing the water again. So again, you have 2 ways. You can create your file directly inside your server, process it using the text editor that you have, or you can create it using your whatever text editor you have in your computer, and then once you're done, upload it to the server. But you should understand, whenever you want to have access to that file, you need to type the IP address, follow that back, / and then the file you want to have access to. And this will be the first part of this video. Later, we're going to start talking about how do we actually open files and how do we write information to files and all of these. Okay, so let's move on and let's talk about how do we read or write to files. What I'm going to be doing here, I'm going to be using the same example that I used from the previous chapter. And what I'm going to do basically, after you enter your login name and your password, and you click login, instead of just showing them on this page, I'm going to try to write them into a file. Then after that, I'm going to create a new page just to read those username and passwords from that file. So let's get this started. Now, the first thing we need to understand here is, let me just go straight to the file. I'm going to be using my server to update the file. So if I come here in ls-al, wait a minute, I need to refresh the page, of course. And now I need to navigate back to that folder. So change directory root, change directory var www.html. Now ls-l. So here's my files. Now I know that the index file is where I'm going to enter the stuff, and login is where it's supposed to be processed. So I'm going to be playing with login. So sudo nano login.php. And here's my file. Now, you guys remember from, I'm not going to go through all these lines because all I'm concerned about is the PHP section, which is this part here. In this part, we read the username and password, and we put them in those folder variables, and then we echo them. So what I'm going to be doing today, instead of echoing them, I am basically going to try to store them in a file. Now, to be able to use a file, there are mainly 3 steps. The first one is to open the file, and the second step is to use the file, and then the third step is to close the file. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start focusing on the opening and the closing, and then we get to the using part. Now, to open a file, you need to define a variable. And I am just going to call it, for example, my file. And remember, every variable in PHP should start with a $. Equal. Now, what do we do after that? We type open, fopen, which just means file open, and then you open a parentheses, and then you put a semicolon here. Now, in this area here, we have 2 parameters to type. The first parameter will be the file that you're trying to open. And again, in this case, I'm going to give it my data.txt. That's the name I gave that file that I'm trying to read. Now, remember here, that file doesn't exist for now. So here's what we need to be careful about. The second parameter is going to be defining what exactly you will be doing with this text file. So what I'm going to do here, I am going to come here and start writing notes, and just to show you the options that we have. So option number 1 is what we call R. And R basically and simply mean you can open a file to read only. Okay? Now the problem here that you have to pay attention to, that if the file doesn't exist, it will be a problem. So R here is to open a file for read only. My second option, or the second option, the parameters that we have W. Now remember here, I'm going to go back here, and between those 2 double quotations, let me just go and highlight them. This is the place where you're going to actually typing those characters. So W is for open a file for, can you guess? Write only. Now after that, we have the third option, which is A. Now A is also open the file for write only. But the difference between A and W is the following. With W, if the file doesn't exist, it's going to create it for you. And with A, if the file doesn't exist, it's going to create it for you too. So again, that's another similarity. But the difference between them is whenever you use W, it's basically going to erase all the data you already have in that my data.txt file and start writing as if that file was brand new and it's empty. A, in the other hand, will just add to whatever information is in that file. So if you're trying to write to a file and you want to erase everything, you go with W. But if you were just going to add, you go with A. And I think append, that's what A is for. Now, the fourth option is X. And X is basically to create a new file for write only. So create a new file for write only. So that's basically it's going to create that file just to read it. It's by the way, it's very similar to W or A, W specifically. Now what we're going to have is we're going to have all these 4 characters repeated with a plus. So for example, R plus W plus A plus and X plus. A plus, and then we have X plus. And the difference here, just the same definition that we had for all of those 4 first characters. It's basically going to be for read and write, and instead of just read and write, read or write. So RW basically it's for reading and writing from a file from the and for W is again read and write to a file. Is going to erase it. A and read and write from a file if it's just going to add to it. If you can try to write to it, and X to create a new file that you can read and write from it. And if the file, one of the things that you should know also with those X's, if the file already exists, it's just basically it's not gonna happen. It's gonna return a false statement as that the file already exists. So in this case, since I'm trying to store data into a file, what I'm gonna be doing basically, since the file doesn't exist, I'm gonna go with A. And at this point, I'm trying to only write to a file. I'm not trying to read. So I'm going to go with A. So it's going to create the file and it's going to be adding to the file. So every time I'm going to go to the login and enter new data and enter new information, it's basically going to add to the file. But if I use W, basically it's going to erase whatever is there and it's going to insert the new data. So you have those 2 options, and it's up to you to choose it depending what you're trying to do here. Since here we are just trying to write to a file, I can use X, by the way. Also, it's still an option here because I'm trying to read. It's going to create that file for write only. And again, you have all these options. Then, to be honest, I'm thinking about it. A lot of these options are just redundant. Like W and X, we're saying here this is going to create a file, and with the W is going to open the file if it does exist, and then it's going to read. The difference between W and X, if the file already exists in X, is going to return false. But with A, with W and A, no, that's not going to be the case. It's just going to read it and use it. Anyway, so I am going to go with let's say W for now. So we're trying to write to that file. So what I'm going to be doing here, I'm going to create a new string. I'm going to call it temp, for example. And temp basically is going to equal the username, that's my variable, dot, and I'll put, let's say, a space and another dot, and I'll put password. And then I'll put dot, and in this case, I'm going to go to the new line. Now, the new line, let me try to remember in PHP. I don't know if this is going to work, but it should. Let's hope this will not be a problem. Now that I have this string here, let me try to echo the string just for testing. I can come here and type temp dot. I can go here and type break line. So it's going to go to the next line. Semicolon. And finally, this is the part, before we actually write anything, let me just move to the closing statement. Closing the file. Once you're done using the file, you have to close it. And to close it, you just call a function called fclose. just like fopen, and you type the name of the object or the variable, which is in this case my file. Now, at this point, I just created the file, I opened it and I closed it, and I didn't actually use it. I just want to make sure that this part is going to work with no problems. So if I come here and type echo, this is just for testing. Again, I want to go to the new line, another break. Let me put semicolon. So again, this should take me to the new line, and then after I run this, I should have 2 lines before I see. Let me just change this to be by a text message, just for me to know how many how many actually break lines do I have? Is this one counted or not? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Okay, so let me just go ahead and control, again, let me just, before I control X, you should understand that in this area here, I should write a code to store the stamp. But for now, I didn't do that. I'm just focusing on the filing, opening and closing. So this is the opening. Those are the options that I have. And this is the closing. And this is the string that I'm going to try to store in this text file. And let me run this, Control X. Yes. And let me go back to my page. If I go back here, and I'm going to type, for example, R. And here I'm going to type E. And actually, it didn't work the way I thought it will work, because I need to have an X-ray. We already had that, I believe. So it's PHP underscore end of line. This is a variable in PHP. So this should work, actually. Now, what I'm going to be doing now is that I'm going to try to write this to this file. And actually, before I do that, let me just go back here and type yes. If I go ls, look at this file that I have right now, mydata.txt. So that one wasn't there before, but since I opened it, it's basically created it for me. So I was able to do that. Now, what I'm supposed to do, I am going to try to save this username and password inside this file. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me log in again. Nano. Let me go down here. The idea here is very simple. You need to actually call a function called fwrite. Okay? Now the fwrite, you have to tell me where you're trying to write. So I'm going to try to write to my file. So it's my file. And you have to tell me what you're trying to write there. And it's going to be $temp. And that's how simple it is. So this is how we write to a file. You open the file, and then whatever you want to write to the file, you have to get it prepared and ready. And then after you write it, then you close it. Now, if I save my work, let's go with yes. Now, let me just go ahead, ls, let me just cat my date.txt. As you can see here, it's empty. Let's go ahead and run this page. And now I'm going to go here, testing. And then for the password, I'm going to go with the traditional password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let me log in. And you can see here that I'm not getting anything in this page, of course. No, cancel. Now let me go back here and let me cat my date. Oh, that didn't work. Well, okay, so after almost 1 hour of looking around, trying to figure out why my code wasn't actually writing anything to the file, I believe, now I'm not sure about this \n yet, I'm going to give it a try now, but I believe my problem was that this W here, I think I was typing it as uppercase W. And this is, again, the most annoying part about coding, that a simple mistake like one lowercase or one uppercase of a character could lead to a waste of a whole hour. Now, after that, you can see that this code here looks a little bit different than the one that I had before, because I had to erase it and write it multiple times. But I was able to find out that my problem was this W here. I think it was uppercase W, and when I changed it to lowercase w, it worked with no problems. Hopefully that was the mistake, because otherwise I don't know what did I do to make it work. So let's just give this a try again. I'm going to put my name here. I'm going to put, let me see here, use a password saved. No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 0. And let me log in. Now it's working, no problem. I could tell there's no problem because previously there was like a white space at the bottom. Now, let me go back to my code. Remember here, the file that I have is called new data. So if I cat new data, you'll see my username and password saved in that file. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say, let me go to, where is it, sudo login. What I'm going to do now, just to make sure this move to the new line will work, I'm going to change the W to be A instead of W. So the new, every time I try it, a new username and password will be actually added to the file. Control X, Y, and now let's go back here. If I go back here, this, I'm going to change this email to be a new one. Let's go, for example, this, and I'm going to go SDEFG, log in. Now let's go back and try and say cat new data, and you can see I got both of them now. And that's how you write to a file. Now the second part, or the last part of this video, is how do I read from a file? Now just to let you know, there's multiple ways to read from a file, but we are going to talk about one of them because most of the methods that's associated with files include loops. Oh, wait a minute. We already covered loops. So I'll talk about it all. So next part of this video is going to be all about reading from files. Okay, so now that we know how do we write to a file, let's see how do we read from a file. Before I start anything, I just want to let you know that the new data text file that I have, I already stored those 4 records in it. So you got those 4 lines stored in this file. What we're going to be doing, we're going to see the multiple options that we had to read from that file. So what I'm going to be doing in this case, I really don't need to go back to my original index file. It's all going to be done using this PHP file. So all I'm going to have to do here is just refresh the page after I am done with modifying the page. So let's go back here. Of course, I have to refresh the page. And here we go. So change directory / change directory var www html. Now after that, let's go ahead and sudo nano login PHP. So I'm going to go down. I am going to keep some of the lines there, and I'm going to remove some of them. For example, we're going to remove the part where we're going to write, and the one we create the text. I'm going to take that all out. I don't need to change those 2. I'm just going to keep them for now. I don't care about them. The part that we need to actually modify is this part. Now, since we are trying to read, as I said before, we can use R in this case if we want to read. Yeah, since we just want to read, we're just going to go with R here. We're not trying to write there. So once you're done with specifying that you're about to read from that file, now you're going to have to find a method. How do you want to read the file? The file by itself contains 4 lines, multiple characters. So what are you trying to do here? Well, let's say I want to read the whole entire file. So what I can come here and say echo. So whatever I'm going to read, I want to show it on the screen. So I can go fread. And in this area here, we are going to put 2 parameters. The first one is going to be the name of the file, the variable file, which is my file. Remember the $sign. And the second part basically is really a little bit different here. What I'm going to do, we're going to call a function called file size. And then I am going to put the name of the file, which is new data dot text. Now you may ask, what are you trying to do here? Well, I'm trying to read the file, and then after that he's asking me basically how many bytes you're trying to read from the file, and I said the file size. So basically I want to read all the bytes in that file. So let's give this a try and see what's going to happen if I actually go and refresh my page. So I am here, let's save it, don't give me a hard time, and run. So let's go ahead and refresh the page. And here we go. So I was able to read them all. Of course, there's no new line here, so you can see them. I'm reading them all together in a single line. Now that's not exactly what I expected. I was hoping that I can get them in multiple lines, but it's okay. We'll try to find out how do we actually, we'll just keep it as it is for now. Yeah, I think that's how that function works, the file size one. But you can see here, I was able to read them all in a single line. Now, this is not how we usually get it done. Let me go back here and try to modify it, because as I said, I mainly may want to read my entire file line by line instead of reading them all together in one line. And if that's the case, we mainly need to have what we call a while loop. And we learned about the while loop. We said as long as the condition that we have is true, then the body will be executed of that. So what I need to do here, I need to have a condition that will tell me when I am done reading from the file. And there's a function called FEOF, which is file end of file. And then I'll just put $. Of course, this is not the whole thing, my file. Now what I need to do here is to put not. So I'm reversing the results. So end of file basically is asking, is this the end of file? If the answer is yes, then it's going to be true. What I'm saying here, as long as it's not the end of the file, keep going. That's basically why I have the not. So this statement here, it's basically, I'm saying here, as long as this is not the end of the file, I want you to do the following. So I'll just go echo, and I will just say fget, fgets. And then after that, you're going to have to type my file. And then after that, I'm going to put a dot, and I'm going to try to go to the next line, br, and semicolon. So what I'm doing here is basically, I'm saying, as long as this is not the end of the file, I want you to read the line of that file. So since I have 4 lines, it's going to read the first line. That's not the end of the file. And it's going to read the second line. That's not the end of the file. Reading the third line. That's not the end of the file. Reading the fourth line. That's not the end of the file. And when you're going to go to the 5th line, which doesn't exist, that will be considered as the end of the file. And that's where this condition is going to be true. This is actually the end of the file, so it's going to be false. You leave, and you're done. So this is how we read the file line by line. Of course, what I can do, if you want, you can come here. You can create a string. And instead of echoing it, you can actually put it in a string and then process that string. And I think we will have a whole chapter to talk about how do I cut strings. So we'll get back to that. But again, just if for the purpose of this class, just we're going to show it on the screen, but we can actually read it and process it. So let's go Control, let's put Y, and now let's go back and refresh the page that we have here, and let's hope it will work. And here we go. So I was able to read them one by one using that loop. Now what we can do also, we can read them by characters, a character by character, which it's something we don't do usually, but it's an option that's available. So let me just go ahead and show you that. A simple modification for the code will be just like, instead of fgets s, put sc, and don't put this back break line here. You don't need that anymore. You want to read them all character by character. So that's the difference between fget C and fget S. S for a string and C is for a character. Let's Control Y. Let's go refresh the page. And it goes back to the same line. So this is how we read from a file. Now what you have to remember here is those special characters, the second parameter in the open statement here. The character here means a lot. You see that I made a simple mistake by typing an uppercase W, and I ended up having a big problem, which was really hard for me to find out because I had to go and read and write multiple times till I actually figured that out. And don't forget also the F close, because this is something that could be easily forgotten. Now this will be the end of this lecture, and this should help you a lot answering the lab of this week. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.